Super Bowl, that one is pretty much done. So we are back to some kind of normalcy here in Northeast Ohio. However, I know that fellow Rotarian here, Scott Allen, was donning, he was ready for the first week of the Buckeyes. So he had a mask on that had the Buckeyes, so we're ready for Saturday. What time do they play and where do they play today? Noon at home. No fans. Against, is it Nebraska? Okay, perfect. So we'll get back to some kind of normalcy with the Buckeyes being good as well. So I have a little question here, maybe from a show of hands, and then of our Zoomers, maybe you can send a note in, little participation from the Zoomers. So how many people have voted in person in Wayne County so far? Who has gone? So we have about 40 people here, and we've about 10, 12. So it's about 25%. So I know that a lot of people are looking to vote in person, and we thought we'd allow Commissioner Obrecht to come up and give a quick overview as to what's happening at the Board of Elections. She's always a commish to me, so.
I thought I'd just take a minute because some people are saying, where's my ballot? I sent it in 2 months ago. So I'll start by, we were not allowed to send out any ballots until October 6th. Our ballots came in on October 3rd. We have 17,000 ballots that came in. All those had to be authenticated. They have to be hand pulled from the 181 different ballots that Wayne County had. Not 181, I'm sorry, 118. We have 118 different ballots just in Wayne County alone. So our staff at the Board of Elections has been working 7 days a week, 10 and 12 hours a day to try and get this done. We have caught up and have mailed up until what has come in this past week. So you should be getting your ballot in the mail. We also heard from the post office, and they informed us, because some that we mailed out October 6th, some people just got that it takes 5 to 9 days to get your ballot. So I want you to be assured that the Wayne County Board of Elections is working very hard to make sure every ballot goes just to the person that it's supposed to. We had some people that were very eager to vote, and they've submitted several applications. I think 6 is our top so far. But you only get one ballot. That we have a drop-off box right in front of Vanover Building, and it's got surveillance, and we have bipartisan team that goes out every day, 3 or 4 times a day to get the mail out of there. So if you get your ballot, you can return it that way. And if you want to know how your ballot is doing, you can go to wayneoh.gov, which is the Board of Elections website, and you can track your ballot. You can see if it's been mailed, you can see if it's been processed. So we have temporaries, we have volunteers, both Republican and Democrat. As you know, every single step, a Republican and Democrat have to sit down together and do every single step. And but we're coming through it. But if you're wondering what's happened when you have 17,000 plus coming in that have to be hand sorted, hand stuffed, and verified, it just takes time. So I thought Can you repeat that website again? Okay, it's wayneoh.gov. Yeah, and you can also do the state website, and I should have that memorized, but it's like voteohio.gov, I believe. And you can track your ballot on either one of those. We have been processing over 500 people a day coming into the early vote system. Last week we were open 8 to 5. This week we're open 8 to 6. Next week we have to be open 8 to 7. And that's all by law. So, yes.
So you have to have a ballot to early vote? You have to get your ballot?
You have to receive your ballot, and then you can drop it off in the drop box. If you feel like just walking in to the Vanover Building, you can do that at any time that we're open. And like I said, this week it's 8 to 6. And there's been a line out there, but not that long of a line, and you'll vote on the machines just like when you go to the poll places. And of course, we're ready to deploy all the machines, all your poll places will be open on voting day.
What happens to the person who requested a mail-in ballot? Okay. Mail that ballot in and then they go and vote in person.
Oh, that doesn't happen. I mean, they'll get stopped. We've got a database where that cannot happen. And if something happens, the ballot would be, not allowed. I've got lots of confidence in Wayne County and Ohio, that everything is being done and you can count on what the results will be when they come back. If you saw us in there working and everything's verified, I think you'd feel very comfortable with what's going on in Ohio. Yeah.
One more. How long can you walk into the Vanover building and vote? When does that start?
It's, I think, and I should look this up, I don't think we're open the Monday before election because we've got to deploy all those machines, but we are open by what state law says we have to, and I believe we are still open the Sunday before election, and that would be 8 to 7 on that week. But I know we're open the Saturday before, for sure. Yeah.
When do you anticipate results being available?
That should, for Ohio or for Wayne County, hopefully, everything should come out, we should be able to scan everything and be ready in the morning. Of course, no ballots are opened until election day. Those are all locked in a safe and stuff. And so they're not opened until election day. So those all have to be opened. We have a scanner. You got to realize we've been using machines. And so when we have all this paper, it's not the system that we've been used to. And we had somebody just slicing open envelopes in the early primary, 2 people all day. That's all they did was open the envelopes. Now we have a machine that does that, thank goodness. But so it takes time. But if everything scans fine, we should be in good shape. Late night, I would say. Anyway, I just wanted you to know, you can tell your folks the ballots are coming in the mail and they can track them. And please use the drop-off box, to put them back in. Thank you.
Nicely done. That was a public service announcement. I appreciate that. You got a lot of questions, so that's good. So the obviously vote early, vote often, right? That's what they say. Yeah, that's what Commish said. Spread the word out in Zoom land. We also have, I've got this phone talking to me, or this isn't a phone, this would be a watch. We do have bell ringing set up. So in sensitivity of time, it does look like we're going to do 4 dates. Is that right, Angel? 3 dates. We're only going to do 3 dates this year. Sign up will be available in your weekly email that you get from me. So you'll likely see it in your inbox on Wednesday and Thursday to remind you of the meeting next week, and then also to give you that opportunity to sign up. If you don't want to sign up via email, they'll have a phone number and an email for Angel, and you can sign up that way. So that makes sense? Got bell ring and rolling. That's cool. Lastly, Joy, if you want to come up and maybe give an overview as to the flag program. And while she's coming up, Wednesday, October 28th, Wayne Bear and Tom Rumball have said, hey, if you can help from either 9 to 11 or 4 to 6 with flag maintenance, it's right there by the Wayne County Humane Society on Mechanicsburg Road. They would greatly appreciate it. So you'll see this in your email, and feel free to send them a note and give them your time. Okay, Joy?
Hi. A couple weeks ago, I got up here and talked to you about some great strides that the Flag Committee is making in terms of marketing initiatives. And today, I'm here to talk to you about getting involved, all of you. Starting now, I will be filling volunteer spots for our door hanger event. So I showed you last time I was here some door hangers. We'd like to canvass the community with those door hangers over the Veterans Day holiday. So the idea being that we leverage the Veterans Day holiday and the flag placements that are out at that time to parlay that into new subscriptions for 2021. So the dates are November 9th through 12th. While the flags are up, we're looking for volunteers to place door hangers at houses that don't currently have flags. And then on November 13th and 14th, if you do currently service a flag route, we're asking that when you pick up the flags on your route, you hang the door hangers at the houses that don't have a subscription. So I'm taking volunteers, and I have a sign-up sheet for all of those positions listed by street. So if you have a street in mind or you want to do your neighborhood, sign up early. And I can work through that with you either at a Rotary meeting or you can email me. And I think my email will go out in the next, my email address and more information about this will go out in the next Rotary email. As far as the picking up the signs go, I'll have those here next week and the following week, October 26th and November 2nd at the meeting. So when you sign up for your position, or if you come to the meetings the next 2 weeks, you can pick up your door hanger signs or make other arrangements with me, and I'll make sure you have what you need to cover your route. That's it. Thank you.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Joy. And Cheryl, Lynn sent you a text message about the viewability for the Zoomers. So. And I believe that's my list for this week. As always, we ask Zoomland and we ask those who are present here, is there anything else that needs to come before this group? Any announcements? No announcements? Anything on Zoom? If so, type that and we'll get you at the end of the program, because we're going to bring Greg Long up, who's going to introduce today's program.
Make sure we stand in that place. It is my pleasure today to introduce to you Andrew Morrison of the Minglewood Distilling Company. Andrew was born and raised in Wayne County and is a graduate of Kent State University. He has worked at Minglewood since its opening to the public in 2017. He became a co-owner and distiller in 2019. He has worked closely with his father, Mark, who is with us today, in establishing the company while proactively marketing the products to state liquor agencies and direct consumers. He has led the charge in bringing new products to the market, which we will hear about today. He currently serves on the board of Main Street Wooster. The Minglewood Distilling Company is located in a historic ice house in downtown Wooster, Ohio. The building originally housed the Minglewood Coal and Ice Company, which operated from the 1880s until the 1950s and delivered coal and blocks of ice to homes in Worcester. Today, the Minglewood building houses a somewhat different business. The Morrisons, operated by the Morrisons, the distillery is putting to use the abundance of locally grown, high-quality grain and has resurrected a long Wayne County tradition of producing rye whiskey. Mark and Andrew's talents and passions transformed Minglewood from an old ice plant into a modern craft distillery and tasting room. Fellow Rotarians, Andrew Morrison.
Hello, thank you for the introduction. So my name's Andy. Obviously, as he said, I'm one of the owners and distillers over at Minglewood Distilling. And I was going to talk to you guys a little bit kind of about what Minglewood is, and then maybe go into a bit of a breakdown of how actually whiskey is made. A lot of people don't really know how it works, and it's usually a pretty interesting process. So Minglewood Distilling Company, oh geez, can you bring me that piece of paper? I just realized I left my notes on my table. Yeah, can you tell I don't talk very often to these sort of things?
I'm going to bump this up a little bit so,
all right,
so the guys in the back can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so Minglewood, we've been distilling since 2016, but we actually bought the buildings back in 2014. And to show you kind of what it looked like, I don't know if any of you guys have seen our building now, but here's some photos when we first bought the place. As you can see, it was an absolute nightmare. It was covered in trees. Here's another photo once all the leaves were gone. You can see trees growing out of the foundation of the building. And like Greg mentioned, the building was actually built back in the 1890s, so very old. But we recently have done a lot of renovations to it before we started distilling. And you can see we've pulled out all the trees, we've repainted, added a lot of new signage to it. And we're also working on the large 3-story building behind our distillery, and that's actually where they used to produce ice. That was built in 1920 by the Bogner Construction Company. And here's a photo of that when we bought the place. And we tore all the trees out. You can see some of the old signage up at the top there starting to fade away. And luckily, a local artist from Millersburg actually repainted that signage for us. So really kind of brings back the history of that building, which is awesome. But to get into what we actually do there now, like I said, we started distilling back in 2016. We opened up our doors to the public in late 2017. We produce a variety of spirits, including vodka, gin, and a couple different kinds of whiskey, including some new products, which is a peach and apple whiskey that just came out a couple weeks ago. So today I'm going to talk more specifically about how we make our bourbon in particular. And as we get closer to the end of the presentation, Mark is going to go around with some samples for you guys to try. So all of our products start off with grains. We always use the same 3 grains in everything. We use corn from a local farm in Apple Creek. Our rye there in the middle is grown over in Dalton by the Myers farm. And then the wheat we get from Seville. So really using those local grains is awesome. It lets us go out to these farms. We get to see kind of the process of the crops, how they're coming along, so we can kind of get an idea of, you know, what we're going to have to do if we need to account for certain loss of crops later that year. And we can talk to the farmers about how they think their crops are doing. So we grind all of our own grains at the distillery. That way we can keep a better eye on consistency of the grain and make sure the quality is what we want it to be every single time. So here's a photo of me grinding grain. We have an old mill that's a roller mill. And when we grind that grain down, we're going to make like a chicken feed consistency. So you can see there in his hand, almost like a really powdery or a really thick flour. So the reason we do this is we have to get access to the starches in these grains. The starches are really important for the mashing process. So you can see here's a video of the grains going into what's called our mash vessel. And this is just a big tank where we're going to cook these grains for about 3 hours after they're ground down. And while they're cooking in there, we're going to add an enzyme to it. And that enzyme is going to start taking all these starches that we were talking about and converting them into fermentable sugars. And that's where the alcohol is going to come from later. So there's another photo of that in the mash vessel there. So after that grain's cooked down, we converted all that starch into sugar, ends up with like a really syrupy oatmeal, almost like that maple brown sugar oatmeal that Quaker makes. Very similar, super sugary. We're going to put that into our fermentation tank here that you can see. And we're going to cool that grain back down because when we cook it, it's too high of a temperature. If we were to add the yeast at that temperature, it would kill the grain. My dad would be pretty upset at me, or it would kill the yeast. We'd lose a lot of money from killing that yeast. He'd be really upset that I killed the yeast. So it's better just to take our time, cool it off to about 80 degrees. We'll add that yeast in there. And then over the course of about 3 days, that yeast is going to take all those sugars, convert them into alcohol. We'll get about 8 to 12% depending on the grains we use and how good a job I did in the mashing. And at this point, we've made like a really sour beer, like a really bad beer. But it's perfect for what we need. So I'm going to use my pointer here to point some stuff out. I apologize to the Zoomers at home. You're just going to have to imagine where the pointer is showing up. But the way this works is we're going to take those grains that we just fermented and we're going to put them into this tank here. And this is our still. And the way it works is essentially you can think about it like a giant tea kettle. We're putting all that alcohol into there and we're going to start to boil it. And as it's boiling, that alcohol vapor is going to rise up into what's called the whiskey dome here. And this is a way that it pressurizes that alcohol vapor, helps it work its way up into the pipes, works its way eventually back down into the bottom of this thing. And this is called a reflux column. And this is where we have kind of a unique distilling process a lot of other companies don't use nowadays. And this is what's called a hybrid reflux pot still column. So it sounds technical. Essentially, each one of those sight glasses on there is going to redistill that alcohol again and again. So if we put it through all 12 plates, which you can see those sight glasses, like I was saying, each one of those is a plate. Each plate's going to redistill it. We get up to maybe 180 to 190 proof on one distillation. So that's great for making vodka or gin, but since we're talking about whiskey, we don't need it to go up to 180 proof. We only need it to go up to about 160. So we'll close off some valves on that tank or on that column there. We'll put it through just 4 plates. That helps keep the final product a lot lower proof, and it helps us keep a lot of the grain flavor intact. Because if you're making a good whiskey, you want to actually taste the corn, you want to taste the rye and the wheat. So that helps keep those flavors there. And there's just a photo of how that works in there. So I guess I won't go too much into that. That's a bit technical. But here's a photo. So once that alcohol vapor goes through there, it comes out at the end, totally clear, looks like water. Doesn't taste like water at all though. And all alcohol always comes out clear no matter what. The thing that gives whiskey its flavor is barrel aging and its color. So Mark is going to start passing around these tastings to you guys here in a minute. And I ask that you hold off on tasting them till we get a little bit closer. But all of our barrels are made in Southern Ohio. We use a company called Speyside Bourbon Cooperage. And we started using them a couple years ago. They have a really great story. There was a cabinet factory that went out of business down there. And this company, Speyside, originally started making barrels in Speyside region of Scotland. Then they moved to France to make wine barrels. And they wanted to get into the US, start making bourbon barrels. They wanted to break into that market. So they found this old cabinet factory had gone out of business. A lot of the workers had been laid off. And they decided just to move right into it. It had all their wood making kind of infrastructure already in place. So they hired a lot of their workers back, put them back to work using the same equipment, just making barrels instead of cabinets now. And we thought that was just, a great story. They're a great company to work with. So we use them. And a lot of their wood also comes from Ohio, which is always fun. And specifically, these barrels are made from American white oak. And the reason you use American white oak for whiskey aging is American white oak has a lot of sugar in it, especially if it's grown in Ohio where we have really cold winters. So they have to have a lot of sugar to survive the winter. So that sugar is great for charring. Oh, here's a picture of him pouring whiskey in there. Okay, so all of the barrels are charred on the inside, and that charring caramelizes that sugar that we're talking about. And when you caramelize the sugar, you get caramel flavor, you get that caramel color, you get nice vanilla, tobacco flavors come through, as well as honey, clove, and a whole myriad of different flavors that people can taste in whiskeys. And you'll get to see that when you try this here in a minute. But yeah, after about 3 to 4 years, that whiskey is going to sit in there. It's going to continue to pick up these colors. And you can kind of see on the slide here, the bottom stave there is from a brand new barrel. And the stave on the top is from a 3-year-old barrel. So you can see how much that whiskey really pushes into the wood. It really picks up a lot of its flavor that way. And we lose a lot of whiskey that way. So people might notice, a lot of older whiskeys tend to be pretty expensive once you get into like the 12 or 15-year whiskeys. And that's because you've already lost about half of your barrel at that point. So we might put in 53 gallons at the start, but even in 2 to 3 years, we lose about 5 to 6 gallons right off the bat, just from leaking and from evaporation of that whiskey just pushing its way through the wood. So, and that kind of leads us to the end here. So after that, we'll take it out, we'll dump it, filter it, bottle it. And then once you guys get these tastings, we'll let you try it. But like we were saying earlier, we make a couple different things. We have vodka, and our vodka is made from 100% wheat that we get from Seville. And wheat vodkas are really nice. They're really soft, nice and smooth. We make a gin that's a citrus style gin. So the citrus kind of helps to ease up that juniper pine flavor that a lot of gins have. Makes it a bit more refreshing. As well as our bourbon is about 3.5 years old now that you guys will be trying. It's a high rye bourbon, which means it's mostly corn with a little bit of rye in there, as well as a little bit of wheat. And that rye helps to bring a little bit of flavor and kind of a punch to the whiskey. Too much corn makes it a bit too sweet. We also make a rye whiskey, like was mentioned in the introduction. And our rye is really nice. It's 80% rye, 20% corn. So very high on that rye content. Almost think like rye bread, kind of spicy, kind of bitey. But if you're drinking like Manhattans or Old Fashions, that's where that whiskey really shines. And then we also make flavored whiskeys, which are our most popular products. So we do a cinnamon, a peach, and an apple now. And those products are all, the basis was always to be easy to drink on those spirits. We didn't want the kind of flavored whiskeys that are too syrupy. A lot of people find flavored whiskey to be too over the top on flavoring or undrinkable. So they're all made from 100% corn whiskey. We actually age in our used bourbon barrels. So a lot of our old barrels go towards these products. And then we'll take them out. We add natural extracts for the flavor. Then we use cane sugar for the sweetener. That helps it keep not so syrupy, helps it keep nice and liquidy. But yeah, that's what I got for you guys. Whoops, I pressed the wrong button. I'll go back. So let Mark pour out those tastings for you guys. But yeah, do you have any questions while he finishes up passing those around? Yes, sir.
Where's your barrel supplier located?
He's located in Jackson, Ohio. It's southeast of Columbus. Oh, sorry. Yeah, the question was, where is our barrel supplier actually located? And he's located in Jackson, Ohio. It's southeast of Columbus, I believe about an hour southeast of Columbus, near the West Virginia-Kentucky border. Yep. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
As popular as bourbon is, it's often confused from the perspective of what it takes to be a bourbon.
Yeah.
What must
Yeah.
be present for
Yeah, certainly.
And I'd like to follow up that question with this question, which is how old, what's the maximum aging that you, at this point,
Yes.
plan to allow your
A very good question. So the first part of the question was, what is a bourbon specifically? There are a couple federal laws behind bourbon, and there are federal laws behind all spirits. So the federal government is who decides what is vodka, what is gin, what is bourbon, what is cinnamon whiskey. So we have to follow these guidelines if we want to use these specific names. Bourbon has to be mostly corn, has to be made within the United States. Bourbon is considered America's native spirit. So just like how Scotland has Scotch and Ireland has Irish whiskey, bourbon is unique to the United States. It can be made anywhere in the United States, not just Kentucky. That's usually a common misconception about bourbon. And it has to be barreled in brand new barrels every time. So you can't use an old barrel for bourbon. And that's why bourbon always is known for having such a rich flavor and rich color, is because it's kind of getting the most out of the barrel. And then the question was also about the maximum aging limit, right? So like I mentioned a little bit earlier, as that whiskey sits in there and ages, you do lose product over time. And generally people say like whatever kind of evaporates through the wood, that's called the angel's share. And whatever soaks into the wood is the devil's cut. And as it goes on more and more, you're going to keep losing more and more product. So we've noticed for our 3.5 year, we usually lose about 6 to 7 gallons. And I think the goal for us is to get to 5 years, 5 or 7. That'll be kind of our signature line as far as like when we'll start bottling product at that point. But we do have barrels held back that we're going to continue to try to age out to 10, 12, 15 years and kind of just see how far we can push it. I do know there are some whiskeys out there that are like 23 or 24 years old. And I've heard they usually only have about 10% of their initial product left in the barrel. So it's kind of a catch-22 as far as it might be a better whiskey, but you're going to have such a small amount of it. Is it worth waiting that long to have so few bottles? But yeah. Yes, sir.
2 questions. One, when the liquor evaporates,
Mm-hmm.
do you just leave the air in the barrel, or do you have to keep topping them off?
We have to leave the air in the barrel. We're not allowed, I know like wine, they usually top it off. Sorry, his question was, as the whiskey evaporates out of the barrels, do we top them off or do we let it go? We usually let it go. I don't know if we're actually allowed to top them off or not. It's probably like a little bit like a gray area as far as legalese goes. I know in general, like the practice is to not top it off, just leave it. And the more air that's in there, usually it actually makes it a bit sweeter, we've noticed. Like if we had a barrel that leaked quite a bit, we had one, I think we lost about 12 gallons out of it. And it ended up being a much sweeter bourbon than a barrel that was the same age, but didn't lose as much product. So sometimes it can be a good thing. It kind of leaves a little distinct characteristics to each barrel.
What do you do with your barrels? If you have to use a new barrel every time, what do you do with the barrels that have already been through one cycle?
Yeah, so the question was, what do we do with our old barrels? And we actually use them for our flavored whiskey products. So we'll use them for those about 3 or 4 times. And then after that, we'll sell them at our distillery. Or people like to use them for decorations and furniture and things like that. So we do sell the barrels at our showroom. Any other questions?
So what's one go for?
Question was, what does a barrel go for? They're actually $145 a piece. So if you want one, feel free to give me a call. I'll set one aside for you. New barrels, if you want a fresh barrel, that's without. If you want one with, it's about $13,000. So if you want one of those, also feel free to give me a call. We'll set one aside for you. We'll get it taken care of. Any other questions? Yeah, Justin.
And maybe you talk about, Paul was here to talk about JFB and the growth of breweries in Ohio. What about the growth of distilleries in Ohio? Has that been a thing?
Yeah, so the question was about the growth of distilleries in Ohio and kind of compared to like the growth of breweries. Distilleries are still relatively new in Ohio up until I think about 10 years ago when Watershed Distilling opened up in Columbus. Ohio was pretty strict on its distilling laws. They really didn't like new distilleries opening up. And Ohio in general has some very archaic, so to say, liquor laws in place, as you guys have noticed if you've ever been to a liquor store. So they tend to be pretty stifling on new distilleries. They've tried to ease up over the years and more are popping up each year. I think that when we last talked to a liquor representative, they told us about I think it's about 2 times as many new distilleries pop up each year. Half of them, though, aren't producing anything yet. They just have a license or they aren't even selling. So opening up a distillery is a very long process. There's a lot that goes into it. You have to get a lot of equipment in place, as well as just making it and aging it long enough to be a sellable product. So I think you'll see probably in the next 4 or 5 years, you'll see more and more of these distilleries that are kind of hibernating, so to speak. They're going to start to actually open up to the public and begin producing. But for now, it's just been kind of a slow burn. Yeah.
And can you talk about how you sell your product? I think it all goes to the state.
As far as like the state system?
Restaurants.
Yeah, of course. So the question was kind of how do we sell our products? And like I was saying, Ohio is a very unique state, so to speak, as far as how they handle liquor. We have to sell all of our liquor to the state of Ohio. They are our only customer. They have a monopoly on the liquor enterprise in the state. And that means that even if I want to sell liquor in my own distillery, if you guys come down and buy a bottle from me, you're not actually buying it from me so much as you're buying it from the actual state of Ohio. So whenever I need to restock liquor in my showroom, I send the state an email essentially saying, hey, you know, I need 12 cases of cinnamon and a couple cases of bourbon and some vodka. They say, that sounds great. I move those products up and I get paid at that point for the whiskey. I get paid about half price of what you guys get paid. So the state makes a nice chunk of profit on it. But I'm told it all goes to schools and local businesses. So we'll see. At least that's what they tell us. But you guys are funding education by drinking. Remember that. It's important. But yeah, and that's just to sell like at our storefront. If we wanted to sell in like the Bueller's up at Milltown or Gary's in Orville is another liquor store that carries us in the county, that is a separate system called the state bailment system. And essentially that means that I'm going to take cases of product and I take them to a warehouse over in Greene near the Akron Canton Airport. And they go there, we get charged rent for the product being there, even though it's the only warehouse I'm allowed to send it to. And then once a liquor store orders it in Worcester or Wayne County or even up in Cleveland, that liquor gets sent to that liquor store there, and then we get paid at that point. But we have to maintain sales quotas in all of those liquor stores. Even though we don't own the liquor there, we don't even own the liquor store, we have to make sure that that liquor moves because the state sees it as a business. And if they don't see a product moving fast enough, they will cut us from their list and force us to only sell at our distillery. So it's a bit of a tricky system to kind of handle. And we've been very conservative in how we do it. We're only in about 25 liquor stores now because the risk of overstretching yourself and getting delisted, as the state calls it, is pretty much too big of a risk to try to push ourselves aggressively. We are also in the Columbus area, but we only have about 1 or 2 liquor stores down there. Just like I said, the risk is too great to try to push in too fast, if that makes sense.
How do you ensure that it moves? I mean, what type of marketing can you put behind it? What's the state
Yeah.
trying to do?
The question was what kind of marketing we're allowed to put behind it. So the state is also very funky about their marketing. We are allowed to market products, though we're not allowed to market specific liquor stores. State says it's against the law for a distillery to say, hey, go to Bueller's and buy a bottle of whiskey that I made. That's an awful, horrible thing to do in the state of Ohio. Could never think of that. Oh, but we are allowed to do tastings, which like you guys are about to do right now. So we are allowed to do tastings at liquor stores, as well as at our storefront. And we're allowed to do radio ads, things like that, but we're just not allowed to market specifically to certain restaurants. So that kind of leads me into the tasting that I forgot that you guys were doing, I will admit. So you all have a little bit of bourbon there in front of you. And I'd like you all to take it, smell it first. And you always want to drink whiskey in 2 sips. You don't want to shoot it. The first sip is like the shock to your palate, so to speak. That gets your kind of mouth acclimated, like, hey, we're drinking whiskey now at noon. We know what's going on. The second sip is where you're really going to start to taste those caramels. You're going to taste the vanilla and the sweet flavors of the bourbon. And like I said, those are all just from the oak, which is really neat that, just aging it in wood for a couple of years can bring out so much unique flavor. So yeah, go ahead and try that if you guys want to. Any other questions though? No?
Excellent.
All right. Thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
Yep.
And maybe this will have some Zoomers come by. They'll be now more in line. So, hey, Mark and Andy, Really cool partnership that you guys have going as far as father, son. Mark, your past history with the community and your giving and activity there has been impressive. And it's awesome to see Andy part of that as well. And bringing on the Minglewood, kind of the step 2 as far as the business with the Morrison family. So congratulations, guys, and thanks to you for all the investment you make in town. Now, I keep forgetting these plaques, but this was strategic. So I'll be down to the shop and I'll bring you your plaque, all right? So I'll swing down this week. I'll bring down your little present for presenting to us today, and I might have a little drink, who knows? It is amazing, though, you talk about the state. The one thing that they're really into business, they're in the liquor business, and if you don't move, then you're out. So that's interesting. No wonder why carry-out drinks are now a permanent thing at restaurants throughout the state of Ohio. So very interesting stuff. Do we have anything here that needs to be said before we leave? What about Zoom land? Cheryl, do we have something? Kimberly has a comment. Kimberly? You're past president, so the answer is no. So I'll take care of that one, Kimberly, no problem. All right, so what do we have what do we have coming up, right? So next week, the 26th, is a meat, cheese, and we will have cocktails here at 4 o'clock, a socially distant, responsible little get-together. Sign up for that. That email will go out on Wednesday, Thursday. Also, next week, we'll have more details as to what we are doing in the month of November, because it is a busy month. So we do not have a specific program per se on the 26th. Again, the email will have more details, but the in-person opportunity is to come here to Greystone. I will tell you that we do have a plan. We're going to knock on wood on this one, folks. It looks like November 16th will be the first opportunity for us to gather back at the church. So Greg and I are going to meet with the church to go over those protocols and make sure that our cooks are ready to go, but it looks like we will be transitioning back to the church here. So we want to continue to support Greystone, who has been a great host for us over the last couple of months. So please join us the 26th, next Monday, October 26th at 4 o'clock here for a cocktail with Rotarians. If there's nothing else for the good of the order, folks, we stand adjourned. Have a good week. Take care.